what were you gonna say about like the whole Kaepernick with business or whatever?
So one of the things that's been brought up about Cap, like doing the Nike shoe deal and keeping a big profile and everything, is people basically saying that like, oh, he's a hack, or he really doesn't care about the movement, or he's not speaking on this thing, doing that thing. To me, I'm just like, look. First and foremost, he made himself a target of white supremacy. White supremacy by the police, white supremacy by the legal system, white supremacy in the NFL, in the general public, everywhere. I want him to have as much money so that way he can have as much security as he needs to feel safe wherever he goes.
Well, also it goes into the thing where it's like, dude needs to make a living. Like,
it's like, do you expect people to do this shit for free? Like, it costs money to travel here and there and to be, to spend hours, saying at these things. It's the same thing people bring up about Sean King. Now, I'm not going to say that Sean King hasn't done some sketchy stuff, but at the same time, it's like our whole infrastructure of this system requires you, in order to make a good living, to live comfortably, you have to be looking to monetize and generate profit off of every aspect of your life, of your actions. And so if your thing is doing social justice, and it's like, look, you're good at it, you're good at bringing attention to this and sourcing information and motivating people to do just causes, why should you not be rewarded for that? That is a talent and skill in and of itself.
Yeah.
And some people just expect them to just be like, oh, just take on volunteer. Like, you know how hard it is to get people who just volunteer for shit and really are dedicated to something 24/7? It is exceptionally rare.
Yeah. I mean, money talks, bullshit walks.
Yeah, exactly. People don't just operate off of ideology or blind passion. We operate off of incentives and punishments.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to embrace that. They think that, oh, we'll just randomly get enough motherfuckers to care about this shit if we word things the right way, or if we, kind of mold their minds into their hearts into looking at things a certain way. Which is like, look, I'm not mad at you. Good hustle and do your thing, but it's like, you're not going to be as effective as you think because you're not willing to meet people halfway and speak to their visceral needs, not just the theoretical needs. Yeah. It's like, yeah, we all want, I personally want Medicare for all. I want people to be able to walk into any hospital and get whatever it is they need. Fortunately, that's not the reality I live in, so I'm still paying for my health insurance because I'm getting older and I need to be able to keep up on my health.
Yeah.
But like with the Kaepernick and shit, with the Kaepernick thing, like the criticism has been like, oh, why did he get a Nike deal and shit like that? And oh, don't believe the NFL and Roger Goodell in saying that they support Black Lives Matter and saying they were wrong. I was like, look, dude, this is a victory. In the cultural sphere, we are miles behind in a game of inches. You know what I'm saying? So we have to fight for every fucking inch we can get. And so we have an international celebrity who promotes anti-racism. You know what I'm saying? And intersectional solidarity with people of all different identities, right? He's making good money. He also has one of the biggest fucking companies, not just a shoe company, but companies in the fucking world who's standing him and signing him checks, right? And keeping his name and profile, keeping it a high priority in the discourse, right?
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, much like how people are like, oh, why did he sign a shoe deal like that? I feel like there's some of these people, I want to say not everyone, but there's like some woke white people and some black people that be like, why is he doing this, that aren't happy with victories because they like the fact of struggling. Like,
yes, there is a fetishization of struggle.
Yeah, they don't want to win. They want to constantly fight. And I don't mean to say they as like a certain type, but it's like woke white people, certain black people, certain LGBT people. There's these certain people in these big groups that want to continuously fight and will not take any victory. You could say there's equality across the board, and they would be like, oh no, you're just handing us this shit. You really don't mean it.
I do think there is an element of that. Speaking of which, did you happen to watch that video I did, the recent one about fetishization of martyrdom?
Yes. Very good.
But I kind of touch on this very thing in that video, right?
Yeah.
Where people expect, once again, we like the spectacle of seeing somebody sacrifice themselves or having to struggle, having to overcome, because we like underdog stories. What people don't do is we don't follow up on the underdog stories.
Yep.
We just like to think like, oh, they struggled hard and that, they were able to overcome the odds and shit, because it's a nice thought. It's a nice thought that everybody who tries to overcome the odds which they find themselves pinned against happen to overcome them. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's often not the case. And, to me, to me, I kind of look at that as partly like, just kind of general laziness of people, of just diffusion of responsibility, of just thinking like, oh, somebody else would take care of the hard work. Somebody else would take care of the dirty work of making sure certain things get followed through on. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. We all have to be proactive in whatever ways we can and find a way to preserve our life. Because if we're not around, because there's nobody else in the world who's going to be 100% like you. So if you're not around to keep your values and fight your fight and your struggle and keep that shit up, then there's literally not going to be anybody else, because it's literally impossible.
Yeah.
So I do think that, like, and of course there's a fine line, right? Because sometimes you do get enough money and become so detached from what's going on with people that when they do propose actual changes that are needed, you get really defensive and say, no, these people didn't deserve it. I'm where I am because I earned it. And they should have to fight more and come up the way I did. But you're not acknowledging the fact that you had to come up through a fucked up system by fucking over other people.
Yep.
So that was my whole thing with like Cap, and just thinking about like martyrdom, and like the thing that you said, that there is a faction of people whom, even if we gave them universal basic income, even if we gave them stuff, even if we gave this shit, they would still, because to me, there's a difference between social progressivism and people who really are just not satisfied.
Yeah.
Like people who are into want social progressivism, we recognize the fact that, that things have moved better in certain degrees, and we still have work to be done, and that there are other groups of people who are still, very much behind in this struggle. And then there are people who are bitching, whom, no matter what changes are made, it's never enough. They can't even acknowledge the progress that has been made. Because it isn't about actually getting shit done. It's about just fucking whining.
Yep.
So I do acknowledge that there's definitely that faction there of people who aren't aspirational. They are, I don't know what the exact opposite word with this would be, but they're the opposite of aspirational. They glamorize struggle.
Yeah. With no success.
Well, I wouldn't say that they have no success. What I would say is that they don't know, they're sore winners.
Yes. Yeah.
That even when they do get some of the stuff that they want, they just continue to bitch about like, but it isn't this thing, it isn't that thing, it isn't blah, 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 blah.
It's the same with like say the kid who passes like high school, who like passes the 11th grade, and he made like B's, and the parents like, why the fuck didn't you make A's? That's like, going into like, social celebrities or social justice athletes is Bubba Wallace. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
NASCAR deal. So the reason why, outside of social justice, why I like Bubba Wallace, I'm not even a huge NASCAR dude, but I'm in the South. I'm around it.
Yeah.
Is that one, from being a young adult, he is one of the people that I connect with. He's not your average redneck NASCAR driver. He's country aspect, much like I like a country singer named Kane Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with Kane Brown.
I'm not.
He's a country singer. He's mixed, raised by his white mom in the trailer park. Really good to come up, but if you look him up, then you'll see like a lot of aspects I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But he's kind of like Bubba Wallace, to where country-wise, I connected to him because similar interests, similar come up, age-wise, stuff like that. So Bubba Wallace is that the reason I liked him is, or still do, is that, he likes metal music. He warms up to stuff like Rob Zombie, or it's like the deathcore stuff that I like. He plays drums, so I connect to him as a young adult, as a young man.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that it's very cool that he is, I don't think it's cool that he's the only black driver. I wish there were more black drivers. That. But I do think it's cool to see someone I connect with that's more like a person on my level in NASCAR. And I do like the fact that Richard Petty, who is from North Carolina, Randleman, North Carolina, which is, 30 minutes from Greensboro, backs Bubba Wallace 100%. So it's the things I could connect with, and how NASCAR backed him when they found the noose in his locker room.
Yeah.
But, car area thing. Is that how they all backed him, which I really like. And the fact that Bubba still stays positive with it, didn't lash out, he didn't do anything. He just says racism has to end, and he did a Black Lives Matter car. Pissed off a lot of people, which is the same way for Kaepernick taking a knee, which is fucking stupid because all this is a car, But It's the fact that he's not lashing out because one, the company, unlike the NFL, the company NASCAR backed him and was like,
I mean, yeah, they were the ones that, because one of the things my friends pointed out to me was that I thought it was Bubba I thought it was like a Jussie Smollett situation, honestly, which is why I wasn't saying too much about it.
I
And then
didn't
he
get that.
pointed out to me, because, well, the thing is, I didn't know. I had the same level of skepticism towards some of this shit, and Jussie was definitely full of it. But then my friend clarified to me, he was like, oh, NASCAR was the one who informed Bubba about it. He was
Yeah.
like, so it wasn't him being like, oh, this fucking shit was in my thing. It was NASCAR. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, we found this thing. So I was like, fuck.
Yeah. Well, because the actual NASCAR company, I'm going to say it's much like Insane Clown Posse. Insane Clown Posse has come out and said they hate a majority of their fans. They said half their fan base they do not agree with, right? But Insane Clown Posse as people are actually wonderful human beings. They donate, they do the biggest Toys for Tots drive. They bought all their mom's houses. They are wonderful people. Much like NASCAR as a company is actually, a lot of people don't want to believe this, is a very progressive company and has always been a very progressive company. One, because NASCAR was founded by bootlegging. So by the cops essentially running their liquor. So when they start, that's very progressive. Especially during the Prohibition era, that was a progressive thing, getting out of the Prohibition. With them now, people are very shocked that they support LGBT rights. They banned the Confederate flag. They back Bubba. And I'm like, how the fuck are you surprised?
I was surprised because when you don't really care about something, then you just go off the superficial elements. Like if you don't really know a music scene, right, then you go, or a musical artist, then you judge them based off of their fan base. Because that's the thing that you're more likely to have contact with, if not instead of the content itself, So it's like, because the thing is, I was somebody who was surprised that they wanted to ban the Confederate flag. I was like, wait a minute, y'all trying to lose your whole fucking industry, like your whole base? I was like, why would y'all do that? I was like,
I guess the difference between what I went back and saying, like how Insane Clown Posse says they do not support half their base, right? NASCAR hasn't come out and said it, but I feel like the same thing with NASCAR. Half their fans, they're very progressive,
they just don't say it.
Yeah, they just don't say it. So when it goes back to how, my job was like, I don't work there anymore, but I worked at the bar at a Prohibition Museum, right? So our people are talking about how NASCAR, how they're all shocked that they support Bubba Wallace, how they put out the LGBT flag. I was like, dude, NASCAR got started from running from the cops because they hated the law. Like, how are they shocked now? But, the fact that they all supported Bubba, how Richard Petty came out and said this one as a young man, well, I'm getting old as shit, but, as a young adult in the society, the reason I like Bubba Wallace, like I said, I connect with him on a lot of levels, but it's one of those things where he's bringing some youth to a sport that wasn't there. And I think NASCAR for years has actually been trying to go a more family-friendly route, actually. They've been trying to change their fan base a lot.
Yeah.
If you actually read up on the history of what they've been canceling, they've been trying to do a lot more positive things to where they want to expand their audience. That's why they made a deal with Monster. Say what you want, the douchebag Monster bro. But NASCAR's eyes, they said, Monster will bring us a younger crowd. It's a start. And so that's how like people, definitely read up on like the shit like NASCAR is used, dude. They're like, there's someone that like, that's very proud of Bubba right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. And to touch on the point that you made about like, them being outlaws and whatnot is one thing is that a lot of people may not even know the history of NASCAR, how it started. And then also you got to remember that you could be forgiven for thinking that, white people who happen to be running from the cops and want to live a more economically liberal existence, making money the way that they want to, may not necessarily be on board with some of the more socially liberal, things. Like I'm sure there's some bootleggers, but bootleggers, well, I'm sure that there are plenty whom, are open-minded and open to that shit. I'm sure that many of them were just as regressive and narrow-minded as many of their peers who were more law-abiding.
Oh, yeah, probably more like
However, I do know what you're getting at in that strain of, man, fuck what the general public wants, or sometimes the general public wants bullshit, so we have to move around them.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's just one of those things where it can go in a really socially reactionary way, it can go in a really socially progressive way. And so whether or not the people who own it or the people who really know the history of it are the ones that are, also supporting this move and shit, it's good to see. And I talked about this on an interview I did with one of my other friends' podcasts, because they were asking me like, oh, how do you feel about all these companies that are doing like Black Lives Matter and saying they support this, blah, 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 blah. And they were like, do you think it's real, or do you think it's fake, or do you think it's going to really be anything? And I was like, look, to me, I don't give a fuck what's in these situations, in these times. What's in somebody's heart doesn't fucking matter, because we're talking about the impact on people's lives of the disparity in generational wealth, about the disparity in education, about the disparity in owning property, about the disparity in, having access to certain services and goods and everything, all that shit. So I don't give a fuck about what's in somebody's heart. I want you to stop gatekeeping or stop keeping me from having access to these things, and to also recognize my complaint and my story as legitimate. And so when you see everybody from like Ben and Jerry's who have been down for the cause, they've always been down for the cause and shit too. And to the NFL and Roger Goodell, whom I don't really think they mean it, but they recognize the way in which the wind is blowing. They see that they see that when it comes to the cultural war, that the social progressives are now starting to really flex and get loud, and they're starting to overwhelm, because there's really more of us. There's been more people who were socially progressive. It's just that they were scared to speak up because they tend not to be as extreme as the reactionaries.
No, I was gonna say, I think it's one of those things too where it's like, do you think they really mean it? Who gives a shit, dude? They're shedding light on your movement.
Yes, exactly. Like I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I want people to. This is not a situation in which the intent of a person's heart really matters, because what we're talking about is material. We're talking about material disparity.
Yeah.
The disparity in material goods. Education is a material. Wealth in itself is a material. Access to good, clean food and water and housing is a material. We're talking about that shit, so it doesn't matter what's in somebody's heart.
Well, also hear me out. It's free advertising.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course, absolutely. I mean, it's
free advertising.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, I'm not mad at them. I'm not mad at them, wanting to use good marketing. It's just that because that's the thing. That's what we want. If their effect on communities is in part based on what they include in their ad campaigns, whom they include as their spokespersons and representatives for the company, or whose images they put on the products and associate with the services and everything, that is broadcasting a certain message. And it's showing to other people, just as you said, good advertising, that, hey, you are welcome. We welcome your business here. Yeah. We're not going to be like that local mom and pop shop where you're not sure if you can go there and not be harassed. Everybody is welcome at our fucking eatery or retail shop. And if you have any problems, let us know, because we're all about making you happy, whoever you are.
Well, that's like, there's this bar in Orlando. They made a post about how they support Black Lives Matter and everybody's welcome. And then some people start saying, well, one of your owners will stand next to a Trump picture, like Trump signed like a year ago or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And then someone's like, all they tells is sexual harassment there, yada, yada, yada. Someone point, but where it's like, one, the picture was a year ago. It goes, two, the sexual harassment's all hearsay, because they've even been open about, like, okay, first of all, the person's not even there anymore. So what do you want them to do about it? And they're like, the fact that they said anyone's welcome here, why are you trying to, it's the same thing we talk about success. Mm-hmm. How, what was the term you used? Not fear of success, but
not being aspirational.
Yeah. Where it's like, dude, this company just made a statement saying, like, we welcome you of any color, any creed, we will take you, we support Black Lives Matter, but now you're just trying to tear them down. So that if you try to tear down this company or any business at all, hypothetically, that's not even the one in Orlando, why the fuck should they support you anymore?
Yes, exactly. Because the thing is that, like, I'm not going to go out there try to express solidarity to something, and then somebody comes up and be like, you're doing it wrong. You know, like with that whole black square thing, the black square thing is a good example of this shit. Because, you know, within a matter of hours, you had, just a reminder to people, whoever happened to be listening, whoever happened to catch this shit, is Black Lives Matter is a decentralized movement. Antifa is a decentralized movement. Anarchists and anti-capitalists and whatnot, they are decentralized movements. Anybody can get up and declare themselves to, it's just a set of ideas and practices, and you adhere to them to the degree in which you want to. But anybody who wants to can associate themselves with any of these movements. You don't need a fucking membership card or pay dues or any of that shit. But it's like, but one of the trade-offs to that, one of the negative things that happens to that is you have every other motherfucker telling you what's the right and wrong way to move. So while at the beginning people were like, yeah, do a black square because this is going to be a good way to help other people, you know, black people promote their shit. So it doesn't, so your stuff isn't blocking out the feed. But it's like, no, you don't. It's like, no, but one of the things that they quickly realize is that like, oh, wait, dumbasses, is that the algorithm is still working. So the people who still get traffic and shit, it's still going to be filling up people's feeds, but with black squares, and they're not going to see shit anyway. So then the move was, oh, you know, take it down and everything. It's fucking up the algorithm. But then, but then I say that again.
The hashtag of Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and then the thing is, people started taking it to another level where they were like, well, because they were trying to tell people that weren't putting up the square, like, oh, your silence is, you know what I'm saying, speaking volumes. And I think I posted like something like that. It didn't have to relate to that. It was something else. But then people were posting stuff like, oh, if you didn't post a black square, if you didn't say anything, then that's a problem and it shows how you feel. And then if people did post it, they're just like, oh, you know, this is just superficial. This is just performative, blah, 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 blah. You don't really care and shit. So it's just like, dude, you're not giving people an out. You're not giving away for people who want to participate and show any sense of semblance of solidarity. You're not giving them a means of actually participating in this shit. You're just setting up parameters for which they need to obey you. And you're not going to gain empathy that way. You're not going to gain support that way by forcing people, by telling people, especially grown-ass other people with their own understandings of shit, to, no, you need to just shut up and listen to me.
Well, dude, that's like, you know, there's this tattoo shop in North Carolina, right? They posted that they supported Black Lives Matter. They got a lot of backlash. It's like, you known well, hired a fucking Proud Boy, stuff like that. And then it was things to where one of their artists used to be like, he went down like a dark path, you know. He didn't say a lot of racial things, but he followed a bunch of stuff and he followed ideas. But he eventually came out, he's like, you know, I was just in a dark place in my life. I was sad, I was depressed. My anger is wrong and I'm sorry. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, good for you. You know, but then people come on digging it back up. And then, so then the guy was like, dude, what more do you want me to do?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, I admitted my mistakes. I admitted my wrongness, you know, ordeal, stuff like that. But then there was another person to where they're like, you know, this shop doesn't show black culture because on their Instagram, there's not a lot of black skin tones that get tattooed. And if my guy popped up and said, look, I'm a black tattoo artist. A lot of black people just don't get tattooed as much as white people do. He's like, it's not about the skin tone only. He goes, and I pick and choose what pictures goes up there. And it goes, one, if the piece that's done on the black person that looks good, it gets posted. Much like a white person, the Asian person, the Mexican person that looks good, it gets posted. But they're like, you know, what the fuck? Like, that first of all, it's a dumb fucking argument. You know, why should this business, after they got attacked by people, mind you, maybe 2 black people, all, and the other 10 are like white woke motherfuckers, you know. And so it's like, why should this business support Black Lives Matter after this?
Right.
You know, and you know, I'm not saying that don't say it, but it's, you know, it's one of the things. It's like, if you're a business owner, it did you more harm.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. The thing is, no, I absolutely agree, and this is why, you know, I don't like the way that some people are. Because one of the most frustrating things that I hear is that, you know, you'll have some of these activists who are just like, oh, if you don't belong to a certain identity, then you're not supposed to speak on the issue. It's like, no, this isn't helping anybody. What I want to happen is everybody who is not black and operates in places where there aren't a lot of black people and they want to know something, I'm like, holy shit, this is an opportunity to help plant the seed of greater understanding to people even when I'm not around. The last thing I want you to do is just shut the fuck up. I want us to have a dialogue and understand so that way you can pass along this information and in a way that I think is most productive for everybody.
Opening your mind and expanding for learning.
Yeah, and a lot of motherfuckers who are like black activists, and it's like, look, we understand, I understand, and people that may not know, I am a black man. There's plenty of information and stories that I've heard and stuff that I know growing up and learning that was never included in textbooks, like Juneteenth. This is the first time I've ever known of non-black people acknowledging or knowing about Juneteenth.
But also explain to people exactly what that is, because I still don't know what the fuck it is.
So Juneteenth is the actual day that slaves were released, because in some parts, even after the Civil War was won, the slaves were not told. And
that I didn't know. Well, yeah.
Yeah. So Juneteenth is celebrating like the actual, like the non-official day in which slaves were free and whatnot.
So was that like a day or a month?
I mean, of course, all this stuff didn't happen on one day, but for whatever reason, the 19th of June is the day in which we recognize that.
Surprised me how it just, I'll say randomly just showed up.
Well, no, it's not that it randomly showed up. It's that it's on the bed. It's right in the back of all these other things that are going on, right? Because George Floyd was murdered on May 25th.
Yep.
And that's when it sparked all this other shit and whatnot. But there had already been waves of people talking about police brutality and anti-black racism and acknowledging more black people all around. So, it's not like, oh, it was completely random, but I was not expecting something that is considered more. This isn't even something that's acknowledged in a lot of mainstream black media or black circles, even if it's known about. So it's not even something that's really much promoted within the community.
I was like, I never heard of that. I never heard of the Tulsa race riots.
Yeah.
There's also I never heard of that. One, as someone who loves history like myself, I loved hearing about it. Not, of course, like loving that it happened.
Right.
I like knowledge. I like learning. I like expanding my thoughts. But knowing that it happened, I was like, wow, man, I would like to know more about this, especially like Tulsa race riots and stuff like that. But it's one of those things to where, it's just, I don't really know where I'm going with it. I guess I can appreciate it coming to light. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I'm happy that it's, happened. But
right, no, of course, yeah.
Where, like, me who loves history, I'm like, wow, that's blows my mind,
Yeah.
I appreciate that I know this history that happened, going back to, like even the Nazi culture of Germany where it talks about, the war and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that I find very interesting that happened that I'm not like, oh, I'm glad this happened, but it's like.
No, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So.
No, it's just fascinating to know. But then, but same thing. It's just like, wow, to see something that was considered underground or very niche, all of a sudden be recognized in the mainstream across the world, was nothing short of amazing. And I love that because it's just further helping to, profile the things that have gone through and giving more details about our story and the understanding of why we have been fucked up for so long across the board, to see how all the different games that have been played and all the nefarious bullshit that has been played, even with our freedom.